Good evening. Welcome to Thursday Book Club. I'm coming to you from Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. For anyone who's new today, and I think we have a couple of new people, my name's Suzanne Leal, and I'm the author of 5 novels, most recently The Watchful Wife and Running with Ivan. Many of you will know that Thursday Book Club's been going a while now. It's strange how the time goes. It started in 2020 during COVID, and it was we're sort of experimenting with how to connect readers online. And I think it was one of the benefits of the Zoom economy that we actually could bring people not only from our local area, but all over the place. Now, even today, we've got people interstate, and often we have a visitor or two from Germany or Sweden or France. So if you're new and you'd like to join the community, or you're watching this afterwards, you can find all the details you need on my website, which is just suzanneleal.com. But on to the main game tonight, and I am delighted to be in conversation with the author Marija Pericic. Marija comes much lauded to us. She was the winner of the Vogel Award, or the Australian Vogel Award, for her debut novel, The Lost Pages. What we're going to be talking about today, apart from a bit of general writing information, is Marija's new book, which is this one, which is called Exquisite Corpse. It's, I don't know how many people have read it so far, but there will be a raffle afterwards. So if you haven't read it, or even if you have, maybe you'll be the winner tonight. It's a terrific book, but we'll go into details why a bit later. Let me introduce you to Marija. Where are you coming to us from today, Marija? Where are you at the moment?
Hi, I'm in Wurundjeri country in Melbourne. Yeah, and
Excellent,
it's
excellent.
lovely to see you all today.
Now, when I got this book, Exquisite Corpse, so it's Exquisite Corpse, Romance is Dead, I thought, what's this going to be about? In fact, I think for me, it's a story of 2 sisters, Lena and Greta, and their interaction with a doctor by the pretty ominous name, I think, Dr. Dance. Just to give a bit of a background for everyone tonight, tell me a bit about Lena, first of all. What does she look like? Who is she? Where is she?
Well, Lena, I think the most important thing to know about Lena is that she's very, very beautiful, and she's has that kind of beauty that everybody notices, and it's a very big defining thing about her. And Lena and her sister and her mum and dad live in Stockholm, and they are in the early 1930s. So it's a sort of historical novel in some ways. And Lena, very sadly for her, is not feeling too well because she has got, I don't think it's a spoiler to say it, she's got tuberculosis. And so things are not going very well for her when we meet her at the start of the book.
And because, as you say, she's got tuberculosis, it's the 1930s, tuberculosis really is a bad disease to have during those times. So you need to see a doctor. The doctor they end up seeing is Dr. Dance. If I, heaven forbid, were to bump into Dr. Dance in the street, what would I see? How does he look?
Well, Dr. Dance, well, if you did bump into him in the street, you should definitely run away. And he is an older gentleman, and he is tall, and he has got a little beard and some glasses, and he looks very distinguished, and he looks like he knows what he's doing, and he looks like you would trust him, but you shouldn't.
I love the name Dr. Dance, and we'll go to the inspiration behind the book a bit later. It's always, I don't know how you find names, but it's always interesting asking authors how they get their names. And Dr. Dance is such a fabulous name. Where did that come from? Can you remember?
Yeah, and so this book is based on a true story. So the names, it wasn't, I mean, I agree with you. Usually if it's a story where it's all really made up, the name finding process is a bit mysterious to me usually. But this one, I've changed the name slightly from the original real names. And so Dr. Dance is based on a man called Carl Tanzler. And Tanz is sort of, that means dance in German. So I just sort of thought, I took that name and translated it because I thought, yeah, it sounds it sounds sinister enough. And I didn't want to use the same name.
You know, I completely missed that. I speak German, but I completely missed that it was Tanzler and dance. So let's talk a little bit more about the real story. Can you just give it to us a bit blow by blow? I don't want you to spoil too much for the story, but how much can you tell us in terms of where the real story took place and what it was?
Well, so the real story took place also in the 1930s, but on the other side of the world in Key West. And it's in the real story, Carl Tanzler, he's got a couple of different names. Speaking of names, his alias was Count von Cosel. Count von Cosel, and he was a German radiologist working there in Key West in the Marine Hospital. And he was working at his job one day, and he came across this very beautiful young woman, Elena de Hoyos, who was ill, it turned out, with tuberculosis. And Dr. Dance, the minute he laid eyes on her, fell immediately and irredeemably in love with her the minute he saw her. And the difficult thing, as you mentioned before, tuberculosis at that time didn't really have a proper treatment. There were sort of cures that people did and quite extreme kinds of surgeries and different kinds of methods that people had. And a vaccine was developed shortly afterwards. But at that time, things were very experimental. People didn't really know what it was. And it was quite difficult to get treated. And the thing about Eleanor and her family is that they were not well off. And the kinds of treatments that were available were very expensive. So having a diagnosis like that is pretty much like a death sentence for someone in that economic state. And Dr. Dance, Carl Tanzler, knew this. So he took it upon himself that he was going to be the one to save Eleanor's life. And this is all true. He's a radiologist. He's a radiologist, but he had an interest in all kinds of things, chemistry and engineering. And so he built some treatment machines just from scratch and used them to treat Eleanor. Sorry, I'm getting some weird sort of thing. So that's the true story. And I actually have some pictures of the real life person that I'm happy to share, that I can share them with you later. I could share my screen to show you. Like I have some like historical photographs of them, if that's, should I share them?
However you would like. It sounds good. So while you're looking for them, so we've got Tanzler. He loves this woman. He's trying to save her from tuberculosis. And then how much more do you want to say?
Let's just say his love for her is stronger than everything else. His love for her is stronger than everything else, and he becomes obsessed, which is, I think, a bit of an understatement. He becomes obsessed with her.
And you can break in if this is a spoiler. I don't think it is. What I found most interesting about that true story was that there's a legal case afterwards. And Dr. Tanzler has enormous support as the great romantic, even though this case is a problematic one for him. And it seems to me that one of the issues that you wanted to explore is the nature of romantic love and whether it is always something to aspire to. Would you agree with that?
100%. This was the thing that really got me interested in this story in the first place. Because I heard about the whole story in a podcast and an episode of This American Life, and it was, the theme of the episode was called Grand Gestures, and it was all about people making these kinds of romantic gestures and these sort of impossible things And the way they told this story in this podcast was exactly that he was this really romantic man, and he was, you know, out to save this woman's life, and he would do anything to save her. And he's remembered still in Key West now. I think there's a tram stop named after him, and he's the most romantic man. The most romantic man alive was like the headlines at the time. This story, for reasons which I don't want to reveal, got into the news, and it became headlines all over the world. There was a Mexican telenovela made about it at the time, and it was really a story about romance. And that was kind of the headline of that story was, check out this romantic guy, and isn't that fantastic? But then if you look into what the story actually was in this particular instance, to me it seems much more like something really controlling and coercive and really not at all loving.
It's interesting because when I read the book, I thought back to do you know it's the Sting song? I think it's a Sting song, isn't it? I'll Be Watching You.
Yeah.
And when I heard around from people that when it was popular, people would use it as their wedding song because it was the most beautiful romantic wedding song. In fact, it's a song about a stalker.
Yeah.
And so I suppose it's a similar sort of thing. It's where does love stop and obsession begin, and where is the complement of being so wanted something more dangerous? Is that something that you're generally interested in, or was it sparked by this story?
It was absolutely sparked by this story. And I think the other thing that interested me is also people's perceptions of something from the outside. And the way that those outside perceptions sometimes, perhaps especially for women, perhaps might override some feelings of unease that they might have in a situation where the outside interpretation of that situation might be quite positive, but the experience of being inside it might not be. And that sort of a balance is something that I was interested in. And when you spoke about the court case and all of that massive support, public support from women, horrifyingly, of dance, that also is based on the true story of Carl Tanzler, where there was this great outcry of support from women in the area. People were fundraising for him and trying to break him out of prison and all these kinds of things. So I became interested in that idea through hearing this story and thinking about it.
There are lots of countries in the world, and Sweden is just one of them. And Sweden wasn't the place where Tanzler lived. Why, of all the countries in the world, did you choose Sweden to set the book?
A couple of reasons. I was living there at the time when I wrote it. And so one of the reasons was I'd never traveled so far north before. And I don't know if anyone's been that far north, but it's so extreme with the darkness and then the summer. And I had expected, I was ready. I thought I was ready for the darkness, and I understood, you know, the winter is dark and there's not going to be much sun and it's going to feel awful, and it did. But then what I didn't expect was when the summer came, it was worse, because it was really this kind of amazing sort of tension all the time. It never gets dark. And the house I was staying in, I don't know why, they didn't have curtains. So the sun is up all the time. And there was this kind of like mad sort of energy just in the air. Everybody's out all the time. Everyone's trying to make the most of the summer. And then I started to do some research, and it turns out that actually there's a really high instance of mental health instabilities at that time of year, as well as the dark times. So this kind of intensity in the environment interested me, and I wanted to set something there. And I had initially been working on this book, setting it in Key West, and I had done a whole lot of preparatory work about the setting and researching and all of that. And I decided to change it to Stockholm because of the reason with the climate, but also because I didn't want the book to be sort of like a straight retelling of that story. because I didn't want it to get sidelined into that sort of romantic way again. I wanted to tell it differently. And I think, so I made some changes. And because I wanted to isolate the kind of mechanics of the way that supposed romance works, and take it away from the true story, so I could say something more about it.
You first came to public attention as the winner of the Australian Vogel Literary Award, and that was for your novel The Lost Pages, which is about Franz Kafka, the writer, and his friend Max Brod. Again, there are many things to write about for a novelist. Why that for you?
That's a complicated one. That was also, I read an article. There was a court case that happened back. I wrote this book so long ago, in 2012 or something like that, or 15, and there was a court case happening at the time. And so the thing about Franz Kafka is that most of his work was published after he died. And I think he only published like some one or two small pieces during his lifetime. And everything was managed in terms of publication by his very good friend and literary agent, Max Brod. And all of Kafka's papers were in his control. But on Kafka's deathbed, he had said, burn everything, burn it, destroy it. And Max very famously did not, and then went on to publish, I think, all of the novels that, The Trial, The Castle, all of those were published posthumously, I guess, without his permission, without Kafka's permission. And so these papers made their way from Prague, and Max emigrated to Palestine, what was then Palestine, with this suitcase of these papers. And these papers were handed down. And then around 2012 or so, a great discovery was made in an apartment in Tel Aviv. And that discovery was many, many cardboard boxes of manuscripts that were Kafka manuscripts that no one had ever seen before. And they were in this apartment of this woman. And also in the apartment was about 100 cats. 100 cats and unpublished Kafka manuscripts, which is like recipe for disaster. So all of these literary archive people from all over the world came over and were just, we need to know what's in these papers. It could be anything in there. It could be novels. Like, what is it? We don't know. But this woman would not let anyone near the papers because they were her private property. And she said, no, this is a gift to me. I'm not giving them to anyone. So this huge trial started with teams of lawyers. It was very like The Trial in Kafka. And no one knew what was in these papers. And in the end, she decreed that she would auction them off by weight, unseen. So you could bid, but you're not allowed to see what's in there. So anyway, the idea came from that. I thought, what is in there? It could be anything. And so that was a very long explanation of how I became interested in that idea.
Oh, that's fantastic. And as you were explaining that, it's just thinking the possibilities of it. I mean, you've got everything, haven't you? You've got the background, you've got the character development, you've got the progress, you've got the oddness of it, with the 100 cats. It's fabulous premise. What I'm going to do before we have some questions is ask you a bit about the Vogel Literary Award. So what year did you win the award?
I won the award in 2017.
And what did it mean to you? What was the immediate, you might actually want to explain how the Vogel works and then what that meant for you.
The Vogel Award is, it's an award for an unpublished manuscript. So that means if you haven't already been published, if you win this award, your book gets published, and you win a prize. And it's a kind of very high profile sort of prize. So to win it is pretty amazing. For me, I'm not someone who studied creative writing or any of that stuff. I was just working on my novel. Actually, no one knew about it. I was secretly working on it all these years. And I thought my whole aim was I'm going to enter this prize. And it's for writers, you have to be under 35 when you win it. So you've got a deadline, So I had this always deadline in my mind of the Vogel. And then it did win. And I was really blown away. I couldn't believe it. And it really, it is not an exaggeration to say it totally changed my life. I didn't know whether I could write a book or get a book published. It's so hard to get published, especially the first time. There's these massive barriers. Like, it's very difficult to do it, and that prize really makes a huge difference, not just for the person that wins. There's also people that get shortlisted, and they also often go on to publish their work. So it was a really great honor to win that.
There's a catch to the Vogel Prize, though. It's a secret for everybody else. But why isn't it a secret for the winner? Can you tell me how it works?
So what happens is you get sort of a phone call or an email saying, hello, I'm so-and-so from Allen and Unwin. Will you meet with me in this hotel bar on this night? And you just think, I don't know what's going on. And so when that happened, although I knew that this person was connected with the Vogels from the publisher, Allen and Unwin, that works with the Vogels, I didn't think that I'd won or anything. I thought, because it was sort of after I'd expected to hear it, and I thought, someone's died and they want some sort of stand-in or something. So I went to this hotel bar, and there was this lady there, and she sort of pushed this paper across from me, which was the non-disclosure agreement. And you can't tell anyone that you have won for 6 months, because in that 6 months, that book goes from a very ragged manuscript to the actual finished copy, which is a very, very fast timeline, I later realized, for publication. So you're allowed to tell one person, and that's it. And then you're there for 6 months just waiting.
Who did you tell? Who was your person?
Well, I cheated a little bit. I told my mum, and I told my partner. But I think I did quite a good job. That's kind of a quite difficult thing to keep under wraps, because you're also madly like trying to edit and rewrite, and you have to pretend like everything's normal and you're still at work and everything and all of that stuff.
Yeah, of course, because it's all the time, isn't it? You can't say, actually, I can't come out because I just can't come out.
Yeah.
And just this year, the Vogel Award has been, it appears, discontinued. Can you tell me a bit about that?
I don't know too much about it, just that it does appear that it will no longer be the Vogels. The Vogels is what was sponsored partly by the Australian newspaper, but also by the Vogels family. It's the Stevens family, who have the Vogels bread and Vogels cereal, those Vogels. And it's actually so nice at the Vogels. If you go to the Vogels party, you get these bags and you get all this muesli. We were all eating this Vogels muesli. It was really good for ages afterwards. It was very nice and lovely. So it seems like there will still be an unpublished manuscript prize that's run by the Australian, but the Vogels, I believe, has finished as of this year.
Well, there you go. So you are one of the treasures, the Vogel treasures.
Lucky ones, yeah.
What's next for you, Marija?
I'm working on something new at the moment, and which is a bit different to my other books that I've done, because it's not historical, and it's a story of two sisters, and it's a story of grief, so also not too cheery, but that's what I'm working on at the moment.
And that's my last question. When you said it's not too cheery, and obviously this, well, perhaps not obviously, but this book, Exquisite Corpse, deals with, we already know, tuberculosis and some pretty dark stuff, and yet there's a lightness to the book. In fact, it's pretty funny. How do you go about lightening either a book about grief or a book about obsession and an illness?
It's a tricky question, because it's true, Exquisite Corpse has some very, very difficult themes, and there was parts of it that were extremely difficult for me to write. But I think that particular story, and especially the character of Dr. Dance, he's sinister, but there's also something very absurd and kind of pathetic about him. And I found that I could draw a lot of humor from that. And the female characters, especially Greta, I think, have a kind of strength that is there's something, I think, to be said. Some kinds of strength are also about lightness, And I think Greta's a lot like that.
Thank you. I'm going to go through the 3 books that you've suggested for us and work out whether you might like to add 1 or 2 or not. In the meantime, if anyone has a question for Marija, this is your time. And if you just pop it in the chat box, then I can ask Marija. So while everyone's thinking about that, the 3 summer book recommendations you gave me, because we organised this some time ago, was Sagittarius by Natalia Ginzburg. What's good about that?
Oh, I just absolutely love Natalia Ginzburg, and I just had discovered her, or I only started reading her quite recently. And Sagittarius is her works are really humorous, I think, and very so closely observed and just really rich. And Sagittarius is a fantastic and very surprising story. That's all I'll say.
Okay, let's move on to Is Mother Dead by Vigdis Hjorth. I think you might have to pronounce that for me.
Vigdis Hjorth. I'm not sure either. That's a translation from a Norwegian writer who is also phenomenal, in my opinion. Is Mother Dead is a book also very funny, also very dark. It's a kind of thriller, and it's about a relationship, an estranged relationship between a woman who's a painter and her mother. And it's hilarious and terrifying. It's a great book.
Excellent. And A Far Cry from Kensington by Muriel Spark.
I think this would have to be possibly my favorite book in the whole world.
In the whole world, that's a big rap.
I know, I love Muriel Spark so much. It was hard to choose one of hers. And I think that book is such a great example of something that is very hilarious, but also very dark as well. And this is a story of murder and intrigue and a publishing house and all kinds of sort of quack medicine, which is sort of a bit of a theme, I suppose, with Exquisite Corpse as well. And so I really recommend, if you haven't read A Far Cry from Kensington, it's a delight.
Do you have any other books that you'd like to add to the collection? Maybe just one?
Just one. Catherine Brabham's The Body Friend, which is a new book, and what it came out last year. And this is a story about friendship, and it's about bodies. It's a fantastic book. It was shortlisted for the Stella Prize, and I think it's been listed in some other awards this year as well. Great. And it's just a beautifully written book. It's set in Melbourne, really lovely.
Thank you. We've got a couple of questions. One from Katrina. Now, Katrina is our resident reviewer. In the newsletter, she does these slightly off-centre, I think, reviews, which is why I think, Katrina, if you haven't read Exquisite Corpse, this might be the book for you coming up. And Katrina's question is, how much of your day do you get to devote to writing?
Oh, I wish as much as I can. For me, it's the constant struggle of trying to get the time. I think it's the case for many writers. And so I kind of work, I suppose, in a sort of seasonal way, almost. Like when I'm coming to the drafting stage, it's very intense, and I try and clear the time, as much time as I can. And I just work more than like 12 hours a day or more. It's very sort of, I guess I'm like a sprinter, not a marathon runner. So I do that for a short period, and I write a lot every day when I do my drafting. And then that's the most intense time. And then really just whenever I can get the time, to be honest. If I had all the freedom in the world, I would spend days and days.
And when you draft, so I'm presuming it's sort of going from the blank canvas to a first draft, do you just write anything, or do you have an outline? This is a question that Dina Davis, who's also an author, is asking. So basically, it's the plotter pantser question.
I'm a definite plotter, 100%. I need to know. I need to have it. I write a plan. I write a scene plan. I write character profiles. I have got often I work with a lot of images. Like I have photographs of places or anything that's relevant or sort of has in the same tone. And I spend months just working on that. And then I just sort of ignore that somehow. And then I work on the draft, and the draft's often very different. So I'm not quite sure, but I do need to know. I do plot.
And you're popping your hands around like to sort of show the photos. So are they physical photos or do you do it digitally on a laptop?
I print them out. I tend to print them out and stick them up around. So I'm looking, and often I work also a lot with maps. For some reason, the places for me is really, really important. And so I need to be able to see, like if people are walking somewhere or where things are in relation to each other, because I'm not so clever with that stuff in my head. So I really need to have it like in front of my face to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And does that mean you've got one space in which you work because the photographs are up?
Well, I live in a very small flat, so it's living room, and they're just up, and I work very unergonomically on my sofa, and I just put them up on a pin board, and I just have them there for the duration.
You know, Solari Gentle is a pretty prolific writer, and she writes, I understand it, on her sofa watching TV. So everyone else is watching TV, and she can just write, just write.
I have heard that from her, and as well, and that seems to me totally mystifying. I don't know how she can do that. It's like a superpower. That's amazing.
What I'm going to ask you now, before I bid everyone good night, is could you please give me a number between 10, between 1 and 10?
Me?
Yes, you. Yes, yes, Maria. Yes. I thought, okay, that's good to be thoughtful about that. You know, there are special quality numbers.
Hold on. A number between 9.
9. Okay. Okay, so this is the highly technical approach to giving our raffle winner, and the number 9 is actually Ruth's iPad. So Ruth, who's here today, you have won a copy of Exquisite Corpse. If you can pop me an email, or even just in the chat now if you'd like to, matter for you, with our mailing address, we'll send that to you. So compliments of Ultimo Press and obviously Marija, the author. Marija, thank you so much for your time today. I'm excited to read the next book, and I loved Exquisite Corpse. It's so beautifully written, so wacky, so funny, so horrifying, and it's marvelous how you weave it all together. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne.
See everybody. See you next week. Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye.